Now, the new development bank set up by the BRICS group of major emerging economies has approved 6 new projects from its 5 member countries. Since the inception of the bank, NDB has approved about 21 projects, with the total amount of the bank's portfolio exceeding $5.1 billion. NDB made the announcement during the 3rd annual meeting of the bank's board of governors in Shanghai, China. The NDB is seen as the first major achievement of the BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India and China, as well as South Africa, since they joined forces in 2009 to press for a bigger say in the global financial order.
The new development bank has embraced an efficient and pragmatic institutional culture, simplified procedures of reviewing and approving projects, adhered to the customer-oriented operation, fully respected the system of the client country, and vigorously developed the investment and financing business in the client country's local currency, and actively promoted the South-South cooperation.
Now, the new development bank also wants to expand lending to the private sector. The BRICS Bank wants this lending to eventually take up about 30% share of its project portfolio. The bank is targeting an overall 70 to 30% split between sovereign and non-sovereign loans in its project portfolio. The bank's first non-sovereign project was a $200 million loan to Brazil's Petrobras for an environmental protection scheme. The second was a $200 million loan to South Africa's Transnet to reconstruct a port in Durban. Now, the NDB's chief operating officer, Zhu Xian, said that there was a gap in the market for them to fill, as they were willing to make long-term loans with tenures of at least 10 years. Well, let's find out more about the bank's activities from Sumitra Naidu. She joins us in Johannesburg now. Sumitra, welcome to the show. Now, we know the board of the bank, Sumitra, has approved a total of about $1.7 billion in loans, and that's for 2018. We know there's 6 new projects that are going to be funded. What are these projects, Sumitra, and how much of that money will we see channeled towards the continent?
So, Uche, the projects are spread across the BRICS countries. South Africa received a loan of $200 million for port infrastructure upgrades in Durban. The Durban port is one of the largest and busiest ports in Africa. There's a road project in India. $350 million was approved for the construction and upgrade of rural roads with a total length of 4,000 kilometers spread across 26 districts in India. There's also that environmental protection project which will get $200 million. The project you just mentioned now, it's aimed at helping Brazilian oil and gas company Petrobras improve its environmental footprint and to comply with the new environmental regulation. Russia got 2 projects in this round, one for the development of water supply and sanitation systems, $320 million there. It will also receive a further $220 million loan for tourism infrastructure. This development, the Small Historic Cities Development Project, will support the sustainable socio-economic development of 9 historic cities of national significance. There's also a Small Cities Development Project in China that received a loan amount of $300 million. There will be infrastructure development in 7 small cities in Chongqing.
Now, Sumitra, the bank does say that it wants its loans to the private sector to eventually take up about 30% share of its project portfolio. It is also targeting an overall 70 to 30% split between sovereign and non-sovereign lending. What is their strategy in the private sector, and how much demand are they seeing from both the sovereigns and the non-sovereign loans?
Well, there's definitely a strong demand, and the bank has already began with these loans. The loan to Brazil, the Petrobras for that environmental development project. Petrobras is half state-owned, and that is a non-sovereign project, private financing there. And the $200 million loan to South Africa, to Transnet here in South Africa, is also non-sovereign. Now, when I spoke to the head of the bank's Africa Regional Center, here in South Africa. He did say not all the countries were keen to go this route. China and India, for instance, prefer sovereign loans, but there was a big demand, and they are still seeing that big demand from the private sector, which members of the bank felt would be a more sustainable approach to allow for this access. So they want to go ahead with the 70-30% strategy.
Well, let's shift focus a little bit now, Sumitra. Now we hear that the ANC has given the go-ahead in its Economic Transformation Committee, and they want to start the process of nationalizing the Reserve Bank, which is quite a surprise to everyone. How soon, Sumitra, will we see the Apex Bank essentially transformed, and what has been the reaction in South Africa to this news?
Well, you know, this news, so the ANC made this announcement just a few hours ago. The ANC National Executive Committee was meeting over the weekend, and it was really just giving feedback today. So this announcement was one of several decisions taken at that meeting. There hasn't been much reaction to this decision, but it also does not come as a surprise. This was a resolution taken in December at the ANC's elective conference. Essentially, the party has agreed it wants to go ahead with nationalizing the Reserve Bank. What the party is doing now is putting that process into action. The committee has been tasked to start this process. So the ANC basically says it's now ready to begin the discussion on how this will happen. So we don't really have the timelines, but there does seem to be an urgency around this, and most of the resolutions that were taken at that elective conference in December.
Well, many thanks, Sumitra, for that update. Of course, Sumitra Naidu joining us there in Johannesburg.